We would give away our child any place we knew where she would be welcome, and why should she maybe has to die when she can live a good life?
None of us, nobody of us, could foresee, even at this moment, that for most of the children and most of the parents, it would be the last goodbye. That a year and a half later or so, from over the same railways, where the train left to take the children to a new country and to freedom and liberty, the trains would roll towards the east and take the parents to the human slaughterhouses and Auschwitz and other places.
He told in Jewish, people with children are going to be killed the same day. And as soon as my mother heard that, she had presence of mind to run down. Before my sister had even a chance to resist or to say, no, I don't want to give the child up. My mother had the child in her arm, and she was pushed to the side where all the women with children and all the people were standing.
All of a sudden I see that German guard keeps them walking back and forth. I could see from the crack from the cellar out. And here he comes in with his bayonet and start digging in the hay. Wait other 5 or 10 minutes, and I opened the shed, opened the cover, and came out and see nobody there. I told the mothers, everything is clear, come out. I started crying. I didn't know what happened to me. I started crying, I started running. And I came to my father's place where he was at the fire department, and he was telling me, I said, what happened here? He said there was a Kinderaktion. The Germans came and liquidated all the children.
If anybody comes to the museum and will see the mementos that we left behind, whether it's a little shoe, whether it's a letter, whether it's a torn prayer book. Remember, these are our precious, precious valuables. Remember that from these books, these children studied. From these prayer books, our families chanted their prayers, and remember them when we are gone.
In the first camp that we were, food was not a problem. But in the other camps, when we were in Stachowitz and then in Ostravzelager and in Auschwitz, I mean, our portions were so small to start with. When I finished mine, my mother's was always waiting for me. She actually made me believe that she wasn't hungry. And whatever she had, she shared with me. So that's why I'm here.
This man just couldn't take it. Nobody could take it, but some had more strength than others. One day, after an exhausted day, and a special hard day I think it was, we come back and his ration of bread was stolen or disappeared. He says, that's it. He wanted to get kind of our approval that we did not let him die. We did not just feed him with words. The three of us each got a third of our meager little ration, what did it consist of? Of a piece of bread like a brick, which was, as we know now, was sawdust in it and everything. And we gave a third of that, a third of our life to this man, so he should not give up. Matter of fact, to the best of my knowledge, he survived.
How come I'm here? What kind of animal am I that I'm enduring all this? I must be an animal if I do. And that was like a resignation to me to go on. So, okay, God, you made me be an animal because only the animals survive such things, losing family, smelling human flesh and bones. And I'm still here and I want to eat and I want to survive. Okay, if that's what you want, I'll do it.
Jacob, what are you doing? I mean, you have said probably your morning prayers, so that's too early for the evening prayers. What are you doing? You said, no, that's right. I say a special prayer to God. I said, what are you doing? I said, I'm praising God. I said, are you out of your mind? Praising God here in this situation where we are insulated, where we are isolated, left alone in this hell, and you are praying to God and you are thanking Him? He said, yes, I'm thanking Him. He said, and I was very irritated, and he said, what are you thanking? What are you God thanking for? He said, I'm thanking God for the fact that He didn't make me like the murderers around us.
I feel somebody is picking me up by my shoulders to pull me out, okay? Then come to my mind, he said Tyrol, they're gonna kill me. They're gonna kill me, I'm not gonna let them kill me. You know, in my mind, I'm not gonna let them kill me. Now, after this time, been through so much, they're gonna kill me now? No way, they're not gonna kill me. And I grabbed the shoe, and I felt the person who picked me up, and I hit him with this wooden shoe like this. The guy started crying, and he said, I'm not going to kill you, I'm an American. I came to liberate you. You're free.
So few lived to know the joy of freedom. And this is the most painful thing. And sometimes a difficulty to enjoy all the things, to know how many were deprived of it.
My family consisted of 3 brothers and 4 sisters. I had brothers and sisters very small, and I'm the only one survivor.
Mrs. Orlewska was deeply religious, and she respected my mother's religion also. She knew that it had to be kosher. So she took one pot, which she said she'll scrub it up real good, and she won't use any fat at all. So she cooked potato soup for us every single day, and my mother would say, take a little money from this. She would not accept. And Mama would say, take a little money when you go to Mass and give it to the poor. And she would say, there are no poorer people than you. You children have no fresh air. You have no light. You have no freedom. Nobody is poorer than you. She wouldn't take a penny. Never. She never took a penny. She did it out of the goodness of her heart.
There was a group of young men and women who risked their lives day in and day out to assist other Jews who worked on false papers, who smuggled money, and all they did this all to have others survive. And I am alive thanks to them.
Why did the rescuers do it? My mother said to me, you know we can get killed, but you know, even if it's the last thing you do, you have to do that. Because you can't live with that injustice and not do anything, and then live with yourself and knowing you didn't do everything you could. I wouldn't want to live in a world where nobody cares a damn.
I couldn't live with myself if I didn't do everything I could. I wouldn't want to live in a world where nobody cares. Those are such inspirational words from someone who knows exactly just how terrible the world can be when nobody cares. What the victims endured was unimaginable and unthinkable. The Holocaust teaches us that the unthinkable is always possible. And yet the survivors remind us that even in the darkest of worlds, some people cared, and that resistance, resilience, and rescue were also possible. Their caring and their struggles to maintain their humanity will remain an inspiration for the ages. And now it is my great honor to introduce our keynote speaker, the Honorable Antony J. Blinken, the United States Secretary of State.
Thank you, Sarah. It's an honor to be part of this Days of Remembrance, Yom HaShoah commemoration. A survivor of Auschwitz wrote that after the Jews were led into the gas chambers, the steel doors were sealed and the gas was turned on. They had only 3 minutes to live. And in those minutes, they, and I quote, found enough strength to dig their fingernails into the walls and scratch in the words that we know so well, never forget. Never forget. Their final living act was to warn us, to tell us to remember. So why is it that we must remember? Well, we remember to honor the lives of the 6 million Jews, as well as the Roma and Sinti, Slavs, disabled persons, LGBTQ, and other individuals, and so many others who were murdered by the Nazis and their collaborators. We remember to recognize the innate dignity of those killed and those who survived, something their killers sought to strip away with each dehumanizing act. We remember that before those people were victims, they were girls and boys, women and men, with distinct lives and hopes. They had unique ways of walking and speaking and laughing. As we saw in the footage shared, they ice skated, they sat on their parents' shoulders, they ate picnics outside. And we remember not only what happened, but also how it was allowed to happen. We remember to look at the institutions and societies we're part of, and to understand better what they did and what they did not do. We remember to learn, and we learn so that we do not repeat. The United States Holocaust Memorial Museum currently has an exhibit called Americans in the Holocaust. One story it highlights is about a man at the State Department named Breckinridge Long. He was appointed in 1939 by President Roosevelt as Assistant Secretary of the Special War Problems Division, a unit created after Hitler invaded Poland. Long oversaw immigration and refugee policy for countries impacted by the war, including the issuance of visas. He had immense power to help those being persecuted. Yet as the Nazis began to systematically round up and execute Jews, Long made it harder and harder for Jews to be granted refuge in the United States. He established onerous security checks, claiming they were necessary to prevent enemy spies from infiltrating the United States, even though there was no evidence that refugees posed that risk. Long didn't hide what he was doing. He wrote it up in official cables. One from June 1940 read, "We can delay and effectively stop for a temporary period of indefinite length the number of immigrants into the United States. We could do this by simply advising our consuls to put every obstacle in the way, and to require additional evidence, and to resort to various administrative devices which would postpone and postpone and postpone the granting of visas." End quote. Postpone and postpone and postpone, as the Nazis continued to kill and kill and kill. People working desperately to get Jews out of Europe didn't see Long's cable, but they felt its impact. Margaret Jones, an American Quaker trying to help Jews escape from Vienna, wrote this after a dispiriting meeting with the U.S. consul in Zurich, and I quote, "We cannot continue to let these tragic people go on hoping that if they comply with every requirement, if they get all the special documents required, they may just possibly be the lucky ones to get visas, when we know that practically no one is granted visas in Germany today." End quote. And yet, Jews went on hoping and trying, even as only a tiny fraction were granted visas. Assistant Secretary Long did still worse. He blocked cables with reports of the mass killing, which would have increased pressure for America to take in more Jews. He lied to Congress. He told them the State Department was doing everything in its power to rescue Jews from Europe, and that the United States had admitted 580,000 Jewish refugees, when in fact we'd only taken in around 138,000 Jews. Now, it's important to note that Mr. Long did not act alone. Others at the State Department helped him draft and implement his policies. Still others sat silently while Long created more restrictions, more delays. But some did push back. A group of determined officials at the Treasury Department came up with payments to evacuate thousands of Jews in Romania and France who faced execution. After countless obstructions by officials like Long, they decided to appeal to President Roosevelt. They produced a document titled "Report to the Secretary on the Acquiescence of this Government in the Murder of the Jews," which laid out in devastating detail the State Department's refusal to help Jews. The authors wrote, and I quote, "State Department officials have not only failed to use the government machinery at their disposal to rescue the Jews from Hitler, but have even gone so far as to use this governmental machinery to prevent the rescue of these Jews." End quote. They warned, and I quote again, "This government will have to share for all time responsibility for this extermination." End quote. 6 days later, President Roosevelt announced the creation of the War Refugee Board to pursue the immediate rescue and relief of the Jews of Europe and other victims of enemy persecution. And the board went on to rescue tens of thousands of Jews and help hundreds of thousands more. But by then, more than 4 million Jews had already been murdered. From 1933 to 1943, America's immigration quotas permitted accepting 1.5 million people. Well, we admitted fewer than 480,000 people. More than 1 million slots unfilled, as thousands of Jews were murdered every day. Never forget, the words scratched into the walls of the gas chambers tell us. I hear that warning as the current Secretary of State, leading the institution where Breckinridge Long and others once used the levers of government to do harm. We must never forget the way individuals can make entire systems, from top to bottom, tilt toward the inhumane. How the sanitized language of cables, briefings, and regulations can be used to turn away people we should be helping. And we must not forget that individuals, armed with the truth in their convictions, can use those same mechanisms to save lives. The Treasury officials who found a way to help evacuate thousands of Jews. Margaret Jones, who submitted one visa application after another in a system rigged to say no because she understood what it would mean to get just one yes. The American GIs, who put their lives on the line to fight the Nazis and whose eventual victory saved so many lives. Lives like that of the teenage boy who saw those words scratched into the walls of the gas chambers in Auschwitz, convict B1713. That boy was my stepfather, Samuel Pizar. He had twice been sent to those gas chambers and managed to escape his death sentence, the second time by picking up a pail and brush and pretending he'd been sent to scrub the floors. We live in a time where anti-Semitism is on the rise again, in America and around the world. And as always, hatred of the Jews tends to go hand in hand with hatred of others, including LGBTQ, people of color, people with disabilities, refugees. When hateful ideology rises, violence is never far behind, as recent attacks on Asian Americans have illustrated. A few weeks ago, the Director of National Intelligence issued a report that racially or ethnically motivated violent extremists present the most lethal threat of domestic violent extremism in America today. It's no surprise that many of these extremists deny the Holocaust. These things are connected, so we must stay vigilant. My stepfather wrote of his time in the concentration camps, and I quote, "More than any barbed wire fence with the searchlights and the machine gun towers around us, the impossibility to glimpse some ray of salvation was the ultimate source of despair. What was happening in the outside world? Did anyone out there know what was happening here to us? Did they care? And America, America, are you still there?" End quote. For my stepfather, America would answer his question in a GI who pulled him up into an American tank, which he called the womb of freedom. Yet there are many places, right now, where people are asking these same questions. People imprisoned in modern-day internment camps because of what they worship or believe, or tortured for speaking up against tyranny, or persecuted simply because of who they are. On this day, we remember the hands clawing into the walls and the warning they left behind. They implore us not only to remember what happened to the Jews and the inherent dignity of those we lost, but also to learn from those who stood by and those who stood up, so that when people again ask, "America, are you still there?" we will be among those who are able to answer, "Yes, yes, yes we are. We're still here."
של 6 מיליוני היהודים, חללי השואה באירופה, שנהרגו ושנשחטו ושנשרפו ושניסחו אוי קידוש השם בידי המרצחים הגרמנים ועוזריהם משאר העמים באושוויץ, טרבלינקה, Majdanek, Mauthausen, Bergen-Belsen, Sobibor.